What really happened on that unforgettable day? Was it just another turning point in Burkina Faso's turbulent history, or something far deeper, more personal, more tragic? How does a young captain rise so quickly, only to face a moment that shakes an entire nation to its core? And the biggest question of all, was Captain Ibrahim Traoré ready for what destiny had written for him? The sun rose slowly over Ouagadougou that morning, but the air didn't feel normal. There was tension, thick, invisible, almost suffocating. People whispered in markets, soldiers stood a little stiffer at checkpoints, and even the wind felt like it carried secrets. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, one of the youngest leaders in the world, stood at the center of it all. He wasn't born into power. He didn't inherit a throne. His story began in a modest setting, like millions of others in Burkina Faso. A quiet boy, disciplined, observant, but with a fire inside him. As he grew, that fire turned into determination. While others hesitated, he moved forward. While others doubted, he prepared. And eventually, he chose the military. Not for fame, not for glory, but because he believed his country deserved better. Years passed. Training hardened him. Experience sharpened him. But nothing could have prepared him for the storm that was coming. Burkina Faso had already been suffering. Extremist violence was spreading. Entire villages were living in fear. Families were being torn apart. Governments rose and fell, but stability never stayed. The people were tired, desperate, waiting for someone to take control and actually change things. Then came the moment that changed everything. A coup. Gunfire echoed through the capital. Military vehicles rolled through the streets. Confusion spread like wildfire. No one knew who was in control until one name began to dominate every conversation: Captain Ibrahim Traoré. At just 34, he had taken power. Some called him a hero, others called him a risk. But one thing was certain: he had everyone's attention. In his first appearances, he didn't look like a typical leader. No flashy suits, no grand speeches filled with empty promises. Instead, there was intensity in his eyes, focus, urgency. He spoke of security, of sovereignty, of taking back control from foreign influence. He promised to fight terrorism with everything he had. And, for a moment, hope returned. But power is never simple, and hope is never enough. Behind the scenes, the pressure was immense. Every decision mattered. Every delay could cost lives. The military expected results, the public demanded safety, and the world. The world was watching closely. Some nations supported him cautiously. Others criticized him openly. Questions began to rise. Was he too young, too inexperienced, too bold? But Traoré didn't slow down. He reorganized military strategies. He pushed for stronger operations against insurgents. He tried to unite a fractured system that had been breaking for years. Yet, the deeper he went, the darker things became. Reports of attacks didn't stop. In fact, in some areas they increased. Villages continued to fall, civilians continued to suffer, and slowly, that early hope began to mix with doubt. Then came that day, the day no one would forget. It started quietly, too quietly. Inside military circles, something was off. Communication lines were tense, movements were being monitored, rumors began to circulate among soldiers. Something big was about to happen, but no one knew what. Traoré was in a secure location reviewing reports. His face was calm, but his mind was racing. Intelligence updates weren't making sense. There were contradictions, gaps, signs of something deeper. Then suddenly, an alert. Unusual troop movements, not from enemies, but from within, his own forces. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Was it a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, or something far more dangerous? A betrayal. Orders were issued quickly. Secure positions, verify loyalties, lock down key areas, but the situation was escalating faster than anyone expected. Gunshots, not in distant Ilmatic, but closer, much closer, inside the capital. Panic began to spread. Civilians rushed indoors. Social media exploded with speculation. Was this another coup? Was Traoré losing control? Or was he being targeted? Inside the command center, tension reached its peak. Every second mattered. Traoré stood firm, but even he knew this was different. This wasn't an external enemy. This was internal, and internal threats are always the most dangerous. He had trusted these men, fought alongside them, planned with them, and now some of them might be turning against him. Why? Power, fear, disagreement with his decisions. Or was there something even bigger behind the scenes? Messages flooded in. Some units remained loyal, others were silent. A few had already taken positions that raised serious questions. The line between ally and enemy was blurring. And then came the moment that changed. Was this the moment everything would collapse? Could a single decision save a nation or destroy it forever? And the most painful question, when betrayal comes from within, who can you trust? The room was silent, but the weight inside it was unbearable. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stared at the name again. It didn't feel real. This wasn't just a soldier. This was someone who had stood beside him, shared strategy, shared risks, someone he had trusted without question. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then came the reality. "Sir, we need orders." The voice broke the silence, but not the tension. Outside, the situation was spiraling. Gunfire was no longer distant. It was closer, louder, more chaotic. The capital was on edge. Civilians were hiding in their homes, locking doors, turning off lights, whispering prayers. And inside that command center, the future of Burkina Faso was hanging by a thread. Traoré took a deep breath. His mind raced through possibilities. If the information was true, then this wasn't just a minor rebellion. This was a coordinated internal strike. If it was false, then reacting too aggressively could turn loyal soldiers into enemies. Either way, one wrong move could ignite a full-scale collapse. He looked up. Verify everything. No assumptions. His voice was calm, but firm. Teams moved quickly. Communications intensified. Calls were made, signals tracked, positions analyzed. Every second revealed more pieces of a puzzle that no one wanted to see completed. And then, confirmation. The name was real. The betrayal was real. For a moment, the air itself felt heavy, not just because of the danger, but because of what it meant. This wasn't just about power anymore. This was personal. A man he had trusted had chosen to rise against him in a moment when the country could least afford division. Why? The question burned in his mind. Was it disagreement with Traoré's aggressive strategies? Was it fear of failure? Or had external forces found a way to influence those closest to him? There was no time to answer, only time to act. Traoré stepped forward. "Secure all key installations. No one moves without clearance." His tone changed. This was no longer hesitation. This was command. Orders were sent across units that were still loyal. Checkpoints were reinforced. Strategic buildings were locked down. Communications were restricted to prevent further leaks. But the opposition was already in motion. Armed groups had taken positions in critical. Some had control over certain routes. Others were spreading confusion, sending false messages, trying to break coordination. It was psychological warfare, mixed with real danger. And in the middle of it all, ordinary people were suffering. Families huddled together in silence. Parents tried to calm their children. The sound of distant explosions echoed through neighborhoods that had already seen too much pain. This wasn't just a power struggle. This was a nation reliving its trauma. Back at the command center, a new update arrived. The rebel group was moving toward a key military base, one that, if captured, could shift the entire balance. Traoré didn't hesitate. "I'm going." The room froze. His advisors stepped forward immediately. "Sir, it's too dangerous. You are the target. If something happens to you." But he raised his hand. "Silence. If I stay here while others fight, then I don't deserve this position." There was no arrogance in his voice, only conviction. Within minutes, he was on the move. The journey through the city was tense. Streets that were once full of life now felt empty, haunted. Smoke rose in the distance. Military vehicles passed at high speed. Every corner carried uncertainty. As he approached the base, the reality became clear. This wasn't a small rebellion. This was a serious threat. Gunfire erupted nearby. Loyal forces were holding their ground, but barely. The opposition was determined, organized, and desperate. Traoré stepped out. No dramatic entrance, no grand announcement, just a leader walking into chaos. Soldiers noticed him immediately. For a moment, something changed. Their posture straightened, their energy shifted, because in that moment, they weren't just fighting for orders. They were fighting for him and what he represented. "Hold your positions," he shouted. His voice cut through the noise. And then he did something unexpected. Instead of hiding behind defenses, he moved forward, closer to the front lines. It was risky, some would say reckless, but it sent a message. He wasn't running, he wasn't hiding, he was standing with his men. The battle intensified. Minutes felt like hours. Every movement mattered, every shot counted, and slowly, the balance began to shift. Loyal forces regained control of Kinikat. Communication improved. The opposing side started to lose coordination, but victory wasn't clean. It came with loss. Soldiers fell. Innocent lives were caught in the chaos. And with every passing moment,